Nominee Brett Kavanaugh and the woman accusing him of sexual assault will both testify before the Senate.
This is going to be interesting. Wendy Patrick joining us now for today's Inside the Law. Wendy, good morning.
Good morning.
I don't know what to expect next week, honestly, when this happens, but why do you think the accuser in this case has been identified? Christine Ford is her name. Why come forward now? A lot of people always say, well, the timing of it is always suspicious, right before the vote, etc. Why now?
Well, it's delayed disclosure in the world of sexual assaults is the norm, not the exception. So that in and of itself is not surprising at all. In fact, sexual assault is one of the most underreported crimes in the world, perhaps the most underreported crime. That's particularly true with young accusers, somebody in their teens.
Sure.
There's a variety of reasons for that. So that's not unusual. The question is, was Kavanaugh the accuser? That's what I anticipate being vetted next week, because Judge Kavanaugh vehemently denies these allegations. 65 women that knew him at the time have come forward in a letter and said this is not the type of man who would ever do this. You know, a tiger doesn't change his stripes, and there's been nothing reported about Kavanaugh even slightly approximating the capacity to do something so egregious and heinous since that time. So there's a lot of doubt as to whether Kavanaugh was the accuser. But remember that an allegation is a starting point and should be taken seriously.
Exactly.
The president came out yesterday and said that. Kellyanne Conway came out first and said this woman should not be insulted, she should not be ignored. President said the same thing. Let's hear from both sides. That's about as much due process as we can afford outside of a criminal context, where of course there's a lot more measures in place to protect the integrity of the process.
Well, how long have lawmakers known about this?
Well, Feinstein apparently knew about it in July, and she's come forward and said, you know, the victim requested not only anonymity, but confidentiality, and that she didn't want to come forward with this. Now, I know there's voices on both sides that are raising very good arguments on both sides. So timing matters perhaps more politically than chronologically in terms of why would somebody wait to come forward.
The question now is, what is this process going to look like next week? I don't remember I don't recall a time when a candidate for the Supreme Court of the United States testifies before the Senate with his accuser of a sexual assault. This is uncharted waters as far as I'm concerned.
That's right, Raul. And Chris, it's different than Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill in many different ways. It's different both in terms of the allegations, in terms of the timing, and on so many other levels. The fact that they're both coming in on Monday, when I first heard that, I thought, gosh, I hope they don't pass each other in the hallway. I mean, you think about the practical realities of having this showdown next Monday. But what's it going to look like? It's going to look very different than what it would look like if it were happening in criminal court, where you do have so many legal and evidentiary, really stopgap measures in place to control the proceedings. The senators are going to be permitted to ask questions that lawyers would never be able to ask in court. And that's what has some people worried about the integrity of the process. So we're all going to be waiting to see what exactly it does look like, because in a post-#MeToo era,
I was just going to say it's a different era for women.
It's a different era for women. And would she have come forward 30 years ago? Probably yes, but she would have been treated very differently.
And you mentioned #MeToo, and you mentioned that leads you to social media, hashtag this and that. Instant judgment is what we're getting here. So I can't imagine what these senators are going through, thinking, well, how are we going to approach this woman? Because it's a very touchy issue and very delicate subject matter.
That's right.
So they can't exactly go after this person the way that they would a candidate or anybody else. How do they handle that?
The way they'll probably handle it is the way a defense attorney would handle cross-examining a sexual assault victim on the stand, is to respect the fact that trauma is memorable. The details are not so much. The where were you, who else was there, but she claims to remember some of that, and so they will be very respectful in speaking with this woman and asking her questions. But then they're also going to give Kavanaugh a fair opportunity to clear his name, because he is adamant that it wasn't him, that he doesn't know this woman, he doesn't know about this party. Now, obviously, nobody really remembers what parties they went to in high school, but you would remember whether or not you committed a sexual assault. That's going to be what Kavanaugh's going to say.
Monday's going to be interesting, to say the least.
That's right. We'll be talking about this next week after
You know it. Wendy Patrick, thank you as always.
Always a pleasure.